I was not always like this. When I first started my practice, I definitely had a harder time connecting with clients. And over the years, I've learned more about how important that is to have that relationship, that connection before anything else.
Law school taught you the law, but it didn't teach you this, how to connect. Be that one lawyer who shows up different, the one clients trust, the one they never forget. I'm Neal Goldstein, and this is That One Lawyer Podcast. Let's get started. Today's guest is a lawyer, teacher, and community leader who's made it his mission to put people before profits, and that's not just talk. For over 30 years, Don McClure has served accident victims across Houston with a steady hand and a wide heart. He's a former police officer turned personal injury attorney, but also a mentor, a dad, and the kind of guy who hands out bikes to kids and sends his clients monthly letters filled with family stories and safety tips. His firm is truly family run. He and his wife, Edith, have built something that feels more like a neighborhood hub than a legal office. He's here to talk about his faith, service, integrity, and why real marketing is just making people feel seen. Don, welcome to That One Lawyer. I've been looking forward to this conversation. I know we met a couple of years ago, and I knew when I shook hands with you, and I don't know, I think somebody introduced us, I knew you were the type of guy that I would connect with relatively easy, and that's for sure. And I believe I met your wife also at one of these events, and I could understand why you both are married, work together well, and have the life that you have. And we're going to certainly talk about that. But before we talk about anything, I love the picture in your background. Can you tell us what that's about?
My office is in Houston, Texas, but I live mostly in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, which is in Guanajuato State. Edith is actually from this state. From another ranchito, a very small town out of, it's about an hour and 20 minutes from here. But this is the parochia right here. This is there you go. That's the main church on the Jardín, on the Centro area that people go and see. And they have a festival called the Festival of Locos, or Crazy People. And they do it every year. They just had it fairly recently. And so people dress up in all sorts of outfits, and some of them are Mexican culture, of course. Some of them are, you see Spider-Man right there. And it's really a lot of fun. They have a whole parade through the city. Now, I will tell you that it seems like they always have a festival here, a parade or something every day. Every time I go into Centro, it seems like something is going on with it. It's a great place to be and celebrate life.
That's great. That's great. I love it. I love it. It's a cool looking.
It is. It is a painting. I saw it on the wall in a restaurant, and I said, I really like that, and I bought it.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. So, Don, can you give everybody a little bit of your backstory before we get into some of the questions?
So I was raised in Houston, Texas, and that's now rare because it seems like a lot of people are moving to Texas, mostly in Austin area. But Houston, look, we're a refinery town. We're energy. And so we have a lot of people coming in and out, but I'm a Houston local, born and raised there. My dad was an attorney, and he did that for a long, long time. And I really had a pretty, I would say, a loving childhood, but definitely a lot of dysfunction in the family. And I think that really contributed to how I progressed through life. I did go to Texas A&M University. My son's there now. I have a lot of pride. I wear maroon just about for everything. But I went to law school. I really wasn't sure what to do. After college, I actually went to be a police officer in College Station, Texas, and I loved it. It was a fantastic job. But I felt like there was something more that I needed to do. So that's when after a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, I went over to law school. And I've been practicing for 30 years. I started off as a general practice, pretty much anything that came in the door, threshold law, that's what I called it. Anything that crossed the threshold, that's what I did. But eventually my client base started really shaping up into mostly Hispanic people. And I was doing family law, criminal defense, of course, personal injury all along. And slowly I became just a personal injury attorney only. And that's what I've been doing now.
That's great. So I know you say that you were a police officer. I'm not sure how many years you were a police officer, but do you think that has had some effect on how you and your clients actually communicate? Did being a police officer help you, hurt you, or neither?
That's really a great question because There are certain skills that I learned from being a police officer, more analytical. We learned that, of course, in law school as well, how to handle a car wreck, writing up the report, talking with people probably in the worst time of their life. The victims are very stressed. Bad things have happened. They don't know what to do. They're really not even thinking clearly. And talking with them and calming them down, getting all the facts. For sure, that has helped me as a lawyer dealing with clients who are going through the worst time of their life. Maybe it's not a criminal case, but it's a civil case where they've been injured and their whole life, their family's affected. So I think the bad thing is that it could be very cold. As a police officer, I was maybe less emotional, and it was more about getting the facts and understanding what was going on and doing that very quickly. Whereas with the clients, I still can use the skills of getting the facts, but I have to add that with authenticity, add the connection with the client. And I think it's been a molding really over time, Neal. I was not always like this. When I first started my practice, I definitely had a harder time connecting with clients. And over the years, I've learned more about how important that is to have that relationship, that connection before anything else.
Yeah, I get it, and I know that police officers often get a bad rap, and it's my opinion that most of them are really good people, and they're out there just to do what they set out to do, and that is to try and help other people in difficult situations. And so, yeah, I would assume that it primes you to deal with people on the civil side who are going through, as you said, some of the most difficult moments in their life. Now, I know you mentioned that you came from a dysfunctional family, as I did, and I'm not probing you to reveal what that dysfunction is. If you want to say it, you can. But do you think that coming from a family of dysfunction, do you think, looking back now, do you think that helped you in dealing with clients now and being the type of lawyer that you are, which we're going to talk about as we move forward?
That's a really good question. And I was listening to one of your podcasts that you did with somebody else, and you were talking about how everybody has a story. And I mean, every single person, our clients, every one of them has a story. Every person has a story. And so I was wondering, really, what is my story? And I have given it thought, but I just couldn't really put the pieces together. So I actually went to ChatGPT and I asked for help, and I asked it to act as an expert storyteller, as an expert author, and what questions would you need to ask me for me to discover my story? And I know a lot of people realize their story right away, but I just really couldn't see it. And so it asked me a whole bunch of probing questions from early childhood to failures to overcoming things and where I am at now. It basically helped me put together the story, and I really thought it did a really good job on it. And I think it helped me realize that my childhood, my dad and mom they both had major issues, and they both loved me, and I think that they did the best they could to parent me. I don't think they had great examples themselves, and I think they tried their hardest to do that. But it made me grow up where I was trying to blend in mostly. I was trying to go along with the flow. And I feel like that was for a large chunk of my life, I was just kind of going along with the flow. And the flow went to being a police officer and then going to law school and becoming a lawyer. And I think at some point, and Neal, it's almost embarrassing to tell you, it took me a long time to catch on, is that I realized that I need to live with intention. I need to live with intention, not only with my business, but with my wife and with my kids. And everything I do should follow that. And it's okay to stick out. It's okay to stick up for myself. It's okay to speak out. And I think that as far as the client's concerned, I realized that, look, I know a lot of lawyers, they talk about how they love arguing, and that's why they became a lawyer. And that's not me. But what is me is that I know how it feels to be ignored or dismissed or feeling like I'm not being heard or not being seen. And I think that when I realized that, now I realize my clients want the same thing. They need me to be present. They need me to hear them, to see what they're going through. And once I realized that, I could make this true connection with my client. I think it was a bridge to my client.
You know, one of Steve Jobs, I mean, he wasn't really known as a great speaker, but he gave a great commencement speech at Stanford. And one of the things that always resonated with me was when he said, You can't connect the dots going forward. You can only connect the dots going backwards. Or should I say looking back? And that's how I was able to connect a very challenging life. And it sounds like you've done that also. And I personally believe that having gone through the difficulties that you have, or I have, or probably many other people, that has given us an arsenal of tools to be able to use with our clients, potential clients, colleagues, friends, so that when we create relationships, they're real, they're authentic, they're not bullshit. They're not there just to get a client to sign the retainer. I think clients see that, and that's why I think you've been quite
Absolutely
successful.
true. And I was thinking back to a quote that you said, and you said people love underdogs, but we don't have to always have that dramatic story. But we have to be authentic and we have to be real, and that's so true.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So I know you practice in Texas, and I've been down there a few times. I have a good friend who lives in a childhood friend that lives in Houston. And if I remember correctly, Houston is filled with big things, giant things. And what I remember seeing is these giant billboards for lawyers. Am I
Every
correct?
other billboard is going to be a lawyer billboard.
Right. So we live in a world that's obsessed with scale, especially with social media. More billboards, more cases, more clicks. But you've stayed pretty lean and personal over 30 years. Do you think our industry has made the mistake growth for greatness?
I think so. And I think that it's so easy to fall into that. I'm going to call it a trap. Everybody has their own life and their own journey, and that's great. But for me, that's not the way I wanted to go. But it's so easy to fall into that and to compare yourself to other people and wondering, even me, I wonder sometimes, well, I've kept it smaller and I've kept the connections, and this is what I wanted. It's something I desired. But I always think about, well, maybe I should be doing more of this or doing the billboards or making a big deal of different things. And it's really not my personality, number one. But first thing I had to do is figure out what success means to me. And for me, it didn't really mean all the degrees on the wall, or I would love to have huge verdicts, but it's not all about that. And it's not all about billboards and doing those kind of things. I think it's really about, people say networking, but I think it's really about the connections and connecting with people, whether it's our clients or our family even.
Right, right. And if you were talking about authenticity and connection and being yourself, I know you've talked about openly, you've talked about your faith, and not just as a personal belief, but as a compass for how you serve your people, your clients. So in an industry that's often leads with ego, and it's in my opinion, just my observation after 40 years, that lawyers disproportionately have much bigger egos than the rest of the population. How has your faith grounded you as a lawyer? No, and that's I'm not confusing confidence with being conceited. You're a confident guy, and you know the law because I've seen you talk, and you know what you're talking about. So, has your faith in some way helped you stay grounded and away from that? Let me look to the right and to the left, and let me see if I can outdo each of them.
I think that faith for sure has an impact on my thoughts and how I was raised. And it gives me insight not only into myself, but into other people as well. I think that we do need to be humble. Again, you're still confident, but you're not full of yourself. And really, you don't have to make everything about yourself. It's really about the other people you're with. And I think that I have instilled it within me, this, I don't want to call it spirituality, but there's something inside me that I try to have a peace of mind over all things. And the way I really find that, and it maybe really sound cliche, but Bob Berg's all about serving value and giving value and serving other people. And I really try to instill that into everything we do at my office, is to serve our clients, and not just about a legal way, but when I hear, for example, maybe they had an anniversary, we try to send them something. Maybe had a death in the family, we try to respond to that. We listen for these things because I've taught staff, the same thing. We listen for these things from our clients to see how we can serve other people. And I will tell you that whenever we do a charity event or a giveaway or helping with a client, they may feel like to them that it might be a big deal. To me, it's a bigger deal that I get something out of it, Neal, is what I'm trying to say. I feel like I get more out of it than the people receiving something, because I really enjoy the feeling of giving back to others and serving others and giving the value that people deserve in their lives.
Yeah, I think that's why you're such a perfect guest for our show, because I'm sure we're going to have a lot of young people, younger lawyers, and when I say that, I'm not giving away my age, but well, even if I give away my age, who cares? I mean, I'm 62, but I'm sure there are people who are going to be listening to this disproportionately who are maybe 40 and under. And so, they're so consumed by what goes on social media that it becomes very difficult to actually say, okay, I'm going to, look at my values and see what works for me, and be authentic with my clients. They just want to see things happen fast, or they buy into all the BS that, lawyers, personal injury lawyers are making a lot of money, and look at the cars we're driving, and look at the house we have and the vacations we're taking. And that's not reality. That's not the truth. And I tell young lawyers that all the time. That's not true. That's not what it's about. And when I say it's not what it's about, that's not what lawyers don't make that type of money. Most of them, some do, some make a lot less than you think, and many make something in the middle. And as you said, rightly so, you have to figure out what's going to make you happy and what's going to be success. So I guess what do you do with clients? I know you say you really try to communicate well with your clients and provide authenticity, and I think that is the way to go. So can you give an example of what you do with a client that maybe other lawyers don't do?
I really learned how to connect with clients through Edith. For me, before this was many years ago, Edith's been working with me for 20 years now. And I used to be, very short. I only had so much time. We're running to court. We have all these things going on, discovery, litigation, life. And to me, it was really about getting things done and moving quickly. And so Edith would get on the phone with some clients, and these were clients or potential clients that we really could never help. But she spent a lot of time with them on the phone. And I'm talking about 30, 40 minutes. I know that as lawyers, we can't always do that. But if we have people on our staff that are very good at this, that can do this. And I told her at one point, Edith, you can't be doing that. You can't be wasting your time on this. You need to move on. And, once you find out we can't help them, do the best you can. But no, I realized that people were really connecting with her and that she was making a difference when they started bringing gifts to her at the office. Even though we didn't ever get hired from them, even though we couldn't do anything for them. Because why? Because she connected with them. She spent the time with them. So it's all really about, again, letting them feel heard, listening, actively listening, and letting them be seen. And so the way we communicate with clients, and now that I'm here in Mexico a lot of the time, of course, I go back and forth. I've had to learn how to connect a little bit differently than always going out, even eating lunch with my clients or doing those kind of things. From the very beginning, we're trying to set up a communication, a roadmap, a customer journey. And at different points of the case, we communicate differently, but we're communicating all the time. We definitely are calling our clients at least once every 10 days. At the beginning of a case, of course, you're talking to them a lot more. You're talking about their property damage, how to fix their car, and you're talking to them about getting to the doctor and, all the questions that come up immediately. But we're always trying to connect with them, even during the quiet times of a case. And sometimes we also have, parallel with that, besides making phone calls, emails that go out. Maybe our welcome sequence of emails, I think, is about 10 emails long. And then we have emails at different times. And then according to the stage of the case they're in, we'll have another email that describes, well, we've got all your medical records we're creating a demand. And at the same time, we're texting. So we're always trying to communicate in different ways, even with video, because people learn things differently. And I've learned that even though I've told my clients something, the truth of the matter is they're in that, I don't want to say a panic stage, but they're not always thinking clearly. They're not always retaining everything. So we try to communicate in different ways because clients learn differently. Some prefer video, some prefer audio, some want to see it in writing. Sometimes it's all three. But we're trying to make sure they understand the process and what they should expect.
You know, and I have to tell you, a lot of lawyers that I know, they like to say what they think people like to hear. In other words, you know, a lot of lawyers have been critical of how much time I've spent with clients. You know, you shouldn't be doing that. You should have the paralegal doing that. You should have the investigator doing that. The truth is, that's not what potential clients, or as I call them, partners, want. They want to see you, the lawyer, or at least somebody who can answer their questions in a thoughtful way that gives them an answer, a real answer, and is honest with them. And truthfully, when I sign up a case, and I still do that because I enjoy that very much. I don't do a lot of the other things anymore, but I do sign the case up, and I talk to the client probably. For most new cases, I speak to them for about 2 hours. And I'm criticized for that, not by my office, but by people that you probably know that think that I'm doing something crazy. But that's what served me well. And that's why you and I have clients that are not only clients, but are fans. We don't need to spend money on Google, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't. There is a place for it, but they go and say, hey, you got to go to Don. He's a great guy. He'll tell you the truth, or he's going to spend a lot of time with you. And there's no better promotion.
No, I totally agree.
That.
You can definitely spend a lot of money on marketing, digital, billboards, whatever. And you're right, there is a place for that. But for me, the biggest bang for my buck and the thing I enjoy the most is making the connection with the clients. And they love it. They love it when you call them, especially out of the blue. And maybe not even about the case. You just want to say,
right.
You know, your case, sometimes nothing's going on a case sometimes. You know, you're getting records, you're gathering information, but you just call the client and say, look, I just want to see how you're doing. You know, what's going on in your life. And it makes a difference.
You know, in my first book, Who's in the Waiting Room, I talk about the fact that we have the Hey system, which is basically, how are you? That's something clients never expect. If you want the clients to stop calling you, you call them and just say, hey, how are you? Most of the time, it's a short conversation, and that's it. If they have a question, it's a good opportunity for them to ask the question, and then you probably won't hear from them for a while. But as you have implemented in your office, you have a system of speaking with the client in one way or another regularly, and that is key because, you know, the statistics show most clients are unhappy with their lawyers or have had a negative experience. And the number one reason why they have either terminated the relationship or they won't go back to the same lawyer is communication, lack of it. So I think what you're doing is really important, and that's really good. I know that you do a lot of interesting things with the community, whether it's giving out bicycles or it's promoting through your newsletters, and you're very involved. Can you talk about
Neal.
that a bit?
I do want to go back on one point just very quickly. People do criticize about how much time, you know, we may spend with a client, but I guarantee you that you're saving time and you're going to create a very good experience that you're going to get good reviews on, because if you're not calling them or connecting with them, they will be calling you, and they will be frustrated because they're already frustrated at that point because they haven't heard from you, and they're going to take up more time. I really feel like it actually saves time by being proactive and doing these things.
I'm sure you could make that argument statistically if you ever really wanted to.
So as far as giving and doing the bike giveaways, in the past we've done that. We had a Selfies with Santa at a Baker Ripley, which was fantastic. I love that. And to see, we had 400 kids every year come. It was fantastic. Now we're very involved with a summer reading program that we put on, and The nonprofit that we're working with right now, they want to make it a year-long thing. So we're going to gear up for the fall and the spring and have kids come read. Now, I'll be honest with you, I always I haven't always gotten a lot of cases from that directly from the people that I've been doing this for, but I feel like we do show what we're doing, not to brag or anything like that, but we do show we're doing the summer reading program to promote it, to the Selfies with Santa or the bicycles. But I think it shows a lot of goodwill, and it makes me feel good doing it. And it makes my staff feel great.
Sure.
They absolutely love doing these things. And even for our clients on an individual basis, reaching out to them, doing extra special things, it makes our culture of our firm, I think, a very pleasant place to work, because we know it's easy to get a job where you're making good money, but it's maybe harder to get a job where you're actually making a difference in other people's lives, and it feels good. So I'm so glad to be doing it for for other people, whether it's the Astros tickets, rodeo tickets, the bicycles, and all the things we do. But it's really about more than that. It's about connecting with others. It's just the feeling of giving something back to the community.
I'm sure that you have a vault of stories with your clients. Is there one story that you could share that really brought it home to you that what you're doing is making a difference in the lives of other people?
Yes, and it involved a family member who was very injured at a refinery. There was a refinery incident, and it never should have happened. I won't go over the details, but he was injured really, really bad. And because he was a family member, I really got to spend a lot of time with him, and I saw him at family parties and other things going on. And he had gone from this robust man to very frail and hunched over, caned, despondent, depressed. And I got to see, it reminded me that I really need to dig deeper into my clients' stories and to find out really how it's affected them on a day-to-day basis. And in the end of that case, it turned out we were able to get a lot of his medical issues taken care of. He's super happy now, living a good life. He's healthy. But I think through seeing somebody close to me walk through the everyday part of being really injured, seriously injured, helped me see through my clients that they don't always express that to you. They're not always vulnerable. They don't always tell you things. I think especially the men, they don't always want to admit they're having all this pain or even a depression from things. And I think it really made me to have that ability to connect even more, because I experienced it, through a close family member.
Yeah, it is amazing when you come across a client and it's very obvious that by the end of, I don't even want to say the end of the relationship because it should never end, but by the time that you've resolved the legal matter, they're in a better position because of what the experience that you've given them, and hopefully the really positive result that you got. I know that, when I meet with a client for the first time, I don't ask them about the facts of the case initially. And they're surprised when the first thing I say to them is, tell me something about your life. And they're a little taken back because I guess that's not something they're expecting somebody to say. And they just, they talk about what else? Their family. They talk about, what kind of job they do. And inevitably, somewhere along the line, our paths cross. Maybe we have, children. Maybe we have sons. Maybe we have a son and a daughter. Maybe we went to the same school or we lived in the same neighborhood. And what happens is, and I mean this, for a good part of that time that I'm meeting with them, has nothing to do with the case. And that's because we're building something that's more important, not necessarily more important than the case, but something that's more important than just getting to the facts of the case. And so, I find that getting to know your client is not only essential, but I could make the case that it's ethically your duty to know the client really well. Otherwise, how are you going to properly represent them, either as in a trial or negotiate with an insurance carrier or in a mediation or in an arbitration, if you don't know what they want in their life? If you don't know their desires and what they want to do. So I applaud you in your office. I have to tell you, there were clients after the case was finished that were crying, not because they were leaving me, but because they were leaving everybody else in the office, because they became friendly with everybody. So it sounds like that your office is doing the same thing.
I think that most people would say, yeah, Don, you're okay, but we love Edith. Exactly. And I can accept that. That's okay. It's fantastic. And I would add one thing, Neil, is that at the beginning of the case, absolutely making that connection in a sincere way because we care about them as people. But also later on, and this is something I started doing about 2 years ago. I do it through email. I ask questions about how they're doing, the impacts on their family, things like that. But I also talk to them verbally on a telephone call because before I didn't always do that. But now I'm really trying to find out, especially after they've lived with this injury for a while, the pain they went through, not being able to pick up their kids, those kind of things, take care of their houses. But at the end of the case or before the demand stage of something, I really start sending this out now, really trying to get a feel for what does a normal day look like? And how has this affected their normal day? And really getting to know them. I think one good thing about being here in Mexico, there's lots of good things, but one of the best things, recently I was doing some business with somebody, and the most important thing was about building the relationship first. You don't talk about the business at hand first. You talk about other things. How's your family? How long you been married? What's your family life like? How big is your family? All these things, and people beam about it. They love talking, telling you about themselves, and it really allows you to have that great connection to really, you're right, ethically represent them. It's more than just numbers. If you really don't know your clients, it's only about numbers. But when you really get to the meat of it, when it makes a difference, I think with an adjuster, hopefully, is when you're talking about them in a way that the only way you would know those things if you had that connection, that relationship with them.
I think you mentioned Bob Berg, I think earlier. And Bob, I think, was the one who said, and look, a lot of people have probably said this, but I think I read it in his book. Very simple. He said, you want to be the best salesperson? Stop selling. And I thought that was key. And I remember my brother he used to say that also. Don't walk into a quote networking event or whatever party that you're going to that alleges, you'll meet a lot of people. Stop selling. Just be yourself and just have a good time and see if you have connections with other people. I want to move on to Edith, because the show wouldn't be the show if I didn't mention Edith. You and Edith, your wife, run the firm together. That's rare. Most firms avoid mixing family and business. I don't buy into that either, but I understand it. So how did that work out for you, and how are you managing to work that so that it's not causing any
It's
difficulties?
definitely not easy every day. It's something that we really had to work on and come together on. And for a long time, I would keep things on my mind. I would go home with it on my mind. Even at my kids' soccer games, I'd be thinking about business stuff. And I really had to learn to shut that off. And Edith will definitely remind me to shut that off, because I'll say, hey, what about this case? What about this person? And she goes, Don, this is our family time. This is, not at the office. We'll wait till tomorrow. Everything will be fine. And I think that made a big difference, is trying, our business is our business, and our family. Really, I can't say business is business, because I think for us, a lot of it is family and people that we love, and we get to really know our clients and become close with them. And so it's interactive. But Edith and I had to definitely say, look, that's business stuff. We'll talk about that tomorrow. And this is family time. It's up and down. She's quit many times, Neal. I fired her many times, but somehow it always works out. We're back together working.
Well, I'm sure she brings a lot of strong traits with her to the firm. And as you've indicated that, clients really love her, and she might be the person that's keeping the relationships. She's managing the relationships in a very positive way so that clients walk away feeling really good about their experience.
It's made a huge difference. I've learned, I thought I was a generous person. I thought I knew how to be vulnerable and give to other people, but I didn't know anything until I got in Edith's family. And I learned really what true generosity was about. I learned about giving all you can, even a little bit more, and really having compassion for other people. And so for her to come in, it totally changed every bit of my business to definitely more about relationships than anything else.
Right. So, and, it seems like, I'm not sure. And so you could correct me if I'm wrong, that you're not, as we said earlier, you're not chasing Google ads or clicks. People are just sending their family and friends to you, which is I think great, over and over. So what do you think makes someone feel safe enough to just trust you with the people that they care about, the people that they
When you can
love?
truly connect with people and they feel like you're not, a lot of people think lawyers, they're afraid of them, or they think we're not regular people, or that we're living on some kind of different life than they have. When they realize that you have problems too, and that you, or whether it's currently or in the past, and when you can be vulnerable and show them that you're just another human being having the same journey, a similar journey at least, that they're having, and that we're all people in the end, and just we don't have any air about ourselves. We can relate to them on their daily walk from their work. I've never worked in a refinery, but I know about hard work and that they work very difficult hours and in a difficult environment. But I try to relate to them with their values because we have similar values. It's all to them, especially my Hispanic clients, it's all about family. Everything's about family for them. And I think that's where I've truly connected with. My Spanish is not great, Neal. I'm still learning. You would think after being married to Edith for over 20 years and living here in Mexico now, it'd be fantastic. And so I've overcome that, I think, by being myself and letting them see that I'm really similar to them and connecting with them and having and listening to them and hearing where they are.
Sure. And I think that's great. And I guess that's a good segue into why and when did you decide that you were going to pivot your life and move to Mexico?
I've always had this dream of being able to travel without and work anywhere I wanted to work. I never really thought it was a reality, and it was just kind of in the back of my mind. And Edith is very, very close with her family. Her family's huge. They're very close, and she didn't want to leave, which I understood. And in the meantime, I was trying. I'm not a techie person, but I try to keep up with things. So I was able to make my office where basically I could work from anywhere with the computers and with the software I had. And so when COVID hit, we went on without a hiccup. Everything was just fine. Everybody went home with their computers and worked, and it was not a big deal. My kids, at that time, I had one in college, the other two were still in school, and one in high school, one in elementary, but they were able to do all their schoolwork online. So my wife is starting to think in the back of her mind, well, maybe this is maybe we can do something like this. Maybe we could travel. And then we had, unfortunately, a friend pass away from COVID. He had just retired like a year before. Fantastic guy, had worked and put all of his time, everything he had into his career, passed away. And my wife said, life is not guaranteed. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. If we're going to do this, let's give it a shot. And she went all in. We sold everything we had. I do have like a little shipping container of mostly sentimental things that we have. And we sold everything. We traveled in Europe for 2 years and with two of my children, and they went to school online. I never missed a beat. I still work full time, but just online. And the truth matters, my clients, they don't really want to come to the office anymore. They don't want to drive downtown. They don't want to get in traffic. Everything, is done digitally now for us. We're happy to meet with them in person, of course. But it opened up just a whole nother world. We're able to still work, but explore the world. I think it's changed my children. I know it's changed me as far as being more open-minded toward other people, to other cultures, from food to religion to, language, whatever it is. It's made a huge impact in my family. And I think it's also made it where I've been able to even relate more to my clients going through these experiences. But it was definitely a hard decision. You have these things, but it also taught us to let things go, that they are just possessions in the end. And so our motto was less stuff, more stories. Less stuff, more stories. And so we try to really make the experiences count more than anything else.
Yeah, that's really something that's not talked about much on social media or certainly within the lawyer's world, because as I kind of indicated to you, I think lawyers are more interested in getting more stuff. And so, listen, when I was a kid, the furthest I ever went, honestly, was, we lived in New York. So maybe I think one time, state New York a few times, but that was it. And the first time I went to outside the United States and outside of some Caribbean islands when I took my kids, first time I went to Europe was when I was in my 50s, and I started exploring the world with my wife, and it is amazing. We just came back from Europe for 2 weeks, and just phenomenal. Yes, and I agree with you. It helps you see the world a lot differently and how people live in other areas very nicely. This is not the only place in the world where people can live well. That's a fallacy. I don't know who promotes it, but I'm sure there are people who promote it, but that's simply not true. I've been to enough countries to make the statement there are people who live very nicely everywhere. So I agree with that, and I give you a lot of credit for making that move because, as Edith correctly said, you never know what the next day is going to bring, and you pulled the trigger, which, God, I really have to give you a lot of credit for. It's not easy. It's not easy, but
Yeah,
you
it's
did it.
definitely not easy. I have learned a lot about how to do things better in my office through the move. And
Right,
I
right.
I think I'd stopped marketing during a large part of that time, and I realized how I stopped those connections, and that really hurt me. So now I've rebuilt all these things, and I think I've made it even better. I think right now, Neil, that I'm serving my clients better than I ever have in my whole life.
And I think you're
At the
living your
same
best
time,
life
yes.
right now. Yeah, that's wonderful. So as we kind of wind down, I usually ask people 3 questions, and they're pretty simple questions, and hopefully you'll indulge us and give us the answers that you think works for you. So question number 1 is, what's the one thing you would tell a lawyer listening now, a young lawyer listening now, something that could help them stand out as that one lawyer in a world of lawyer
First thing,
lookalikes?
go get that Bob Berg book, The Go Giver. Absolutely go get that. It's all about, he's a salesman, he's not a lawyer, but it's all about that next self.
Right.
Yeah,
Same,
exactly. It's the
same
same
thing.
thing. The truth of the matter is, every day we're selling, whether we're a lawyer or something else in life. And it teaches him, he sees it as a get the sale, get the sale, get the sale. And that's a very short term way of looking at business. And what he learned through the book, he wanted to meet this guru, the ultimate guy that knew he sold everything, right? And he wanted to see him. And he realized that it was really about the long term. It's really about building the connections. It's about really caring, and not just about the sale, but really about caring who this other person is and how you can serve them. And so number one thing I would recommend is go read that book, because I think it will make a true difference. It doesn't mean we can't be aggressive and working toward things and our goals and all that kind of things, but it really gives us a great foundation about why we're doing it. And that's what's going to make us successful in the long term.
Right. And that's 100% right. So go and get that book, The Go Giver, Bob Berg. It's amazing when I tell people, be yourself. I grew up as a very sensitive kid, and I kind of, tried to stuff that away because I didn't think that was cool, because my friends didn't think it was cool. But what did we know? We were teenagers. Only later on did I realize that sensitivity became a strength for me. And I leaned into it, because that's who I was, and it worked for me. The second question is, if you could go back and talk to your younger self, what would you say, knowing everything you know today?
Boy, this really kind of hit me, but that it's okay to fail, that it's okay not to be perfect.
Yeah,
That
great.
everybody is struggling with something. And it's so easy to look at where somebody else is. And I still catch myself doing this today, seeing what other lawyers are doing and how other people are
Right.
doing something. And that's why I think I have to come back to the definition of success. And I think that the definition can change over our time, over our life. It might. But I had to realize that for me, what I want for success is very maybe different than what other people want, and that it's okay.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. And let me just add, you know, I said to somebody recently, I said, I was at a cemetery, and I know it sounds morbid, but it's really not. And I looked around and I see all the headstones, and they all have one thing in common. Every one of them has one thing in common. It doesn't tell you what their gross income was. It doesn't tell you what was on their 1040 or whatever it is. It doesn't tell you what car they were driving or what the square footage of their home was. It only tells you great father, great dad, great grandfather, charitable, great teacher, whatever it is. And so that, at the end of the day, those are the things that we have to think about. And the final question is there someone that you've lost personally or professionally who you want one more conversation with? And if so, what would you say to them if you had that moment?
Well, it'd be my dad for sure. I have so much more I want to talk to him about and tell him about. And I would love for him to see my kids and have that relationship with them. And I would just want him to know that even though things weren't always perfect with our relationship, I love him for who he is. And I accept him for who he is. And I was just very thankful for all the wisdom and the love that I did get from my dad. And I think he definitely is a large part of who I am today, with my successes and with my failures.
I'm sure he knows that. That's wonderful. That's beautiful. And Don, can you give all your contact information or whatever you want to give so that if people want to connect with you, talk to you, hire you?
Okay, so my email is don@attorneymcclure.com. And the office is 713-571-7777. I tell you, I'm open to anybody calling or reaching out to me. One thing I found out, Neal, is that the real successful lawyers, they're always willing to talk to you about a case, always willing to help you and mentor you. So I would love to do the same because I've had I've had those opportunities. I would love to do that with somebody else. If they have any questions about moving or working digitally or whatever it might be, I'm happy to help.
Yeah, Don is a very giving guy, so take him up on that. If something here hits home for you, don't keep it to yourself. Tap subscribe, drop a comment, and share this with a lawyer who needs to really hear it. This is That One Lawyer Podcast. See you next time.